Security. So we have to log into the SAP system. Mandatory, we need a user ID and a password are required to log into the SAP systems here. So why security is required here? Is a to protecting the SAP data and applications from the unauthorized use and access, right? So sometimes what happens, the unauthorized persons, they will log into SAP system, they will theft the confidential data, and so the important data, they will theft it here. So here SAP every year, so there is a audit will happen in the systems as per the client customer. The audits will happen based upon the audits. So they will identify the critical actions done in the SAP systems. So those things they will identify it here, right? So here SAP system contains very sensitive data, very sensitive and the confidential data here, the business data and the client data, every confidential data it contains. So hence, there is a need for the regular audit of the SAP computer systems to check the security, data integrity issues in the system here, right? So why? Because there are the purchase orders, sales orders, there are many things will run. So we should keep, so the normal security measurements are required here, right? So that is the reason in SAP we have the concept is called the user ID, password, and roles authorization based concept in SAP systems here. So user means in SU01, so we can single user creation we can perform it here. User creation we can perform in SU01 transaction code here, right? So that is the in SE01 user creation, lock the users, unlock the user, and reset the password, and so validity date, all kind of things, copy the user, so delete the user. So all those things we can do it in the SE01 transaction code here. Only user, if the create the user is not only user is required, user required the some roles also you required here. The roles also required. Why? Because if you assign respective role, the user can perform the respective activities in the SAP systems here. Otherwise, you can only authorize it to log in, but so you cannot access any one of the applications, business applications in SAP system because of no roles, because of the roles are not assigned in SAP systems here. So that is the main thing of the roles here. So definitely if the user is there here to access the data, so definitely so the roles are authorizations we have to assign in SAP systems here. So role will define so what you are. The role will tell you so what activities you need to perform in SAP system after the authentication, right? So without role, you cannot access anything in the SAP systems here. Without role, you cannot access anything in the SAP system. While accessing also, while something like without you only created the role, then you can only access, you can only created the role means you can only log into the SAP system, but you cannot access any one of the transaction code here. But in that case, so you need to create a role here. Definitely you need a role required. Role creation, we have to do it, right? So if you have the role, then if you assign to the multiple users, right? One role we can assign to the n number of users, we can assign it. So that based upon the role, in that role, we will maintain what transaction codes he has to access, like what level of transactions codes he has access, then all kind of things we need to provide to the role to the user here. Role to the user we have to provide to the role we will assign to the user here. So that's what we have to do it here, right? So here the roles creation and all we will do it in the PFCG is the transaction code. in the PFCG transaction code, we will do the role creations and so role creations, authorizations, and also here. So in the authorizations as well, authorizations we will assign to the role. Authorizations we will assign to the role here. Why? Because so role we will assign to the user and authorization we will assign to the authorization object we will assign to the role. Authorization object means the particular transaction code you want to access the full access, only display access, only write access, only display access. So what level of access you want to do it here? So that kind of things you can access using the authorization object. So authorizations role we have to assign to the one particular user in SAP system, one particular user in SAP system here. So we can log into the SAP system here. Okay. So we can log into the SAP system. So there we can assign the so roles and everything we can assign it here. Right. We can create the roles and assignment, everything. So we can do it. So here we go to the SE01 transaction code. If I create one user called the demo user, demo, suppose like demo or any one of the user, if I create it here, demo 01, just click on the create button. Okay. So just you can type the last name, some mandatory parameter, the user first name, email address. So these things are we have to provide here. So there are the types of users are there in SAP here. While creating the user, we have the user types. There are the 5 types of users are there in SAP, right? Types of users here. Types of users here. Types of users in SAP, right? So here, so there are the 5 types of users in SAP here. While creating the user, what type of user you are going to create it here, right? In SU01, what type of users you are creating. So first one is the dialog user here. So dialog user, system user, and service user, and so reference user and communication user, right? So communication user. They are the 5 types of user here. See, dialog user, system user, communication user, reference user, service user. So what is meant by dialog users? Dialog users means humans. We we are the dialog humans who will log into the SAP system with the user ID and password. Those are the dialog users. So those they have to change the initial passwords. Why? Because why they called as the dialog users means here the dialog work process will take the dialog work process will take the so dialog responsibilities. Big dialog work process will take care of this. While log into the SAP system, dialog work process will take care of the so request and process the dialog request and everything. So that's why so dialog users. So it will provide the access to the SAP GUI for the all the logon types and every time here. That is called the dialog user here. So system user means here it allows perform the background processing, communicate internal. So suppose like example, system user. So system, if you create the system user, what will happen? So those system users, there is no password, initial password expiry. Then you need to reset the password. Whatever the password you set here, that is the password here. So and this system user we use in the background processing. The system user we use in the background processing, communication with internal communications. workflows. So those perspective, we will create the system user here, right? So then communication user for so dialogue free communication for external RFC calls and everything. Communication, external RFC destinations, external RFC calls, we will use here communication user here. So then service user. So service user, the service level, if any, we will use this service users here. Reference user is not for the, so it's not for the logging purpose, just to reference permissions and roles perspective. So it's not, we will use this one. So most frequently dialog user for login to the SAP system. For the background jobs, we will use the system users and everything here. So we are creating the dialog user. So then it will ask the initial passwords and everything here. That's why we are creating the user here, right? So then in the logon tab here, defaults parameters. So here default means SNC is not required now. What is the language, how the decimal notification, how the date should be displayed to you here, DDMMYYR. So how you, which format you want to display, either 24 hours or 12 hours format. So what is the printer device you want to assign? What is the time zone you want to assign? So these things we have to assign it. These things we have to assign it here. So I'm not assigning the roles here, right? Just only creating the user here, right? So demo 01 user we created here. So demo the 01 user. So demo 01 user I created here. So now I will log into the system here, right? So with the demo 01 with the initial password. Now, if you are setting the initial password, so then it is asking the initial password. We set the password, which means this is the definitely dialog user. Why? Because as a human, you are logged into the SAP system. This is a dialog user here. You are logged into the dialog free communication. You log into the dialogs user, right? So dialog user, you log into the system. Dialog user here, right? So dialog user, you logged into the system. That is done. So now what? Right? So now if you access something, if you're trying to access something here, you cannot able to access. Why? Because you are only authorized to, you are only authorized to access the, you are only authorized to log into the SAP system. But there are no roles or no authorizations provided to access anything here. Right? But in that case, here, the role concept will come into the picture. User you created in SE01, that is fine. So in SE01, we can create the user, we can log the user, so we can do whatever we want. We can delete the user, we can delete the user, we can copy the user, we can log the user, we can lock, unlock the user, we can reset the password of the user. So all those things we can perform it in the SE01 transaction code, right? So, but only user you created here. What about the only user you created? What about the roles and responsibilities here? Then if you go to the PFCG transaction code here, PFCG is the role creation here, right? PFCG, we have the role creation here. So here we can create the one role here. So suppose like Z underscore the basis admin role. Basis persons who wants to log in, then they will get the all the basis related admin responsibilities. You can execute it here. Then we can go to basis here, go to the menu. Here you can access the transaction codes here. So basis means what transaction codes he has to enter, right? So basis means all the transaction codes we have to list here in the roles concept here. What you want to access, all the things we want to, you can assign to the user here, right? So SU, so SM, so SM21, right? SM50, SM04, whatever the basic transactional codes we have. So all the transactional codes we can assign to the users, right? If we assign to the users, you assign to the users, right? So then authorizations. This is also important field while creating the role. authorizations here. You only assigning the this transaction codes to the user to access this type of things here, right? So, but authorizations also important here in the PFCG authorizations, right? Then first generate the profile here. The profile will be generated here. Then we need to scroll down and go to the change the authorization data. Change authorization data here. In the authorization data, we need to add the authorization objects. Authorization objects we have to assign it here. Authorization objects. So even though you assigned ST22 all those things here, but so you assigned, but even though you are unable to access, why? Right? This is the your user. You have created the one role created. So, but you are unable to access here because of role you created that respective authorization objects you need to assign to the users here, right? That role you have to assign it here. Here, if you go to the SU22 or SU24 here we can find out the respective authorization objects here. If you go to SM, suppose like SM50, okay, click on the OK button here. So you will find out the what is the respective authorization object here. The other object is important here. But because that object we have to assign here, that respective authorization object is important here. Then you can find out the authorization objects. This is a background job server related authorization object, CTS related, development workbench related. So every transaction code you are accessing the SAP system means the backend there is a authorization object. Select manually, click on the authorization object here. Go to here. So system authorizations manually here. What authorizations you want to assign here? So what is the transaction code? So it's a batch one. So what transactions you are trying to assign to the user here? So system messages SM02, SM21. So then T22 and whatever the transactions you are trying to access, all will be available here. So you can assign it to the all the transaction codes and everything to the. So you can check what is missing. So everything you can assign to the users here. Basis audit authorizations. So full authorizations. If you want to give the full authorization, so user will get the full access to the transaction codes here. So once done it, then save it, then generate. So we need to generate that one here. So main thing is that finding out the authorization objects are very important here, right? Authorizations are green here. Now you can assign this to the users. So whoever the user is there here, demo user, you can assign to the demo user here, right? Just perform the, in case of it is the yellow, just perform the user comparison, right? User comparison. Then it should be green. Always authorizations and the user should be green. Sorry. So here the user and role we have assigned. So directly in the role, we can assign the user. Once everything is done, then we can access the user to access the transaction codes here, right? So now see, he is able to access the transaction code. Now he is able to access the system log. Now he is able to access the some other transaction codes here, right? So the now how the user is able to access the transaction code here, demo 01, right? So now he is able to access the some other transaction codes as well here. So how he is able to access means because of the respect to the authorization objects here, right? Respect to authorization objects, he is able to access, right? So that is the main thing of the transaction code here. He is able to access the AL08, which we assigned here. So SM04, which we assigned to the user here. So he is able to access all those things here. So he is able to access all those things here, but not the SM37. Why? Because we have not assigned the SM37. Only here, only few we have assigned here. Then if you can go to the here, just assign the SM37 as well. Okay, SM37. Also, you can assign it. Come the save button here. So then we can able to access the SM37 as well here. But the respective authorization object we need to find out. What is the respective authorization object from the SM36 and SM37 here, right? So here, if we go to the SM37 here, here we can assign the respective, what is the respective authorization object and all those things we can assign it to the user here, right? That is the authorization object here. So here you can find out in the, so yes, so here SU22 or SU24, I guess, in the both the transactional codes we can use to find out the so authorization objects. What is the authorization objects we can find out here, right? So in SU53 we can find out the what are the authorizations you are missing. So those related things we can find out here. What are the authorizations you are missing for this user? So those things we can assign. So here, if you for that user who are missing the not authorized, just you can go to the SU53 here. In this transaction code, we can find out here what authorizations are missing. If you want to access the SM37, you need the S underscore T code, the transaction code. The authorization object is required here. S underscore the T code access is required here. The S underscore T code, the authorization object we required. Authorization object means here. So again, we have to go to the here, the authorizations, right? So go to the change authorization data. Then we can just add the manually. Then S underscore the T code, S underscore T code. We can assign it to the here manually. So then what is required in the S underscore T code here, right? Which fields we have to assign. So those things we have to assign. Then just save and generate by manually, then it will come to green status here, right? So what you want to trying to access, all those things you can access in the systems here, right? SM underscore 37. So now you see he is able to access the SM underscore 37 transaction codes and everything here, right? So SM36 you can able to access the transaction codes here. So you have the S underscore 13. So transaction codes you have assigned, right? Now see you are not authorized to SE11. So based on that, whatever the basis scopes here, whatever the basis team under the scope here, those things we have to assign. Those things we have to assign to the users here. That is what we have to do it in the systems here, right? So that is the so that is the authorization. So role we have to create it, but authorization object also important to assign to the role. That role we will assign to the multiple users here, right? This is a simple user and role creation here. But in every organization, there is a separate security team. They will do the GRC security. They are the more security roles are there. They will perform it here. So for us, previously security is part of the basis team, but now security they have more. So that's why they have divided. We have separate team for the every organizational. They are the separate security team for the authorization object. So this is only small part. In the R3 security is the small part. Apart from that, we have the GRC security, access control, process control, risk management. We have so many things are there in the security part here. So that is the one thing here. And also, if you want to create the bulk users, right? Normally SE01, PFCG. So then SU53 to find out the authorization errors, authorization missings, all those things we can find out here. Then SU10 is the mass user creations here. Suppose there are the hundreds of users, then how can you create in one go? SU01 is only for the one user creation at a time here, but hundreds of user creation, then you can go to the SU10 here. Then we can mention the SU01. So demo 02, then demo 03, right? Demo 04. So that multiple users you can maintain here, right? Multiple users you can maintain. So then we can create the all the users at a time. We can create the all the users at a time. We can create it here. All the users we can create it here, right? So that is the user multiple users. You can keep it here. Just click the single click here, right? So all users will be created in one go. In one go, all users will be created. So all the dialog users, are there any roles you want to assign? So any roles means what is the role you want to assign? Suppose like you created like Z underscore, so base is admin role you created. So this role we want to assign, right? So that role you have to assign today you created, right? So this role you have to assign, click on the OK button. Then all users at a time created, mass users will be created in the at a time. Here you can see, see all users are created. They have the password also generated automatically. The password also generated. This is the password. Role also added. Role also added. Password also created here, right? So the bulk users are created in the SAP systems here. You can see mass users are created. Right? It's our users are created in the SAP systems here. Mass users are created. So in this way, we can create the user. If you want to log the user here, all the users, mass users, just log the users here. Log means all users are logged status here, right? So then if you want to unlock, you can unlock the all the users as well here. You want to reset the password of all the users here, there is a reset the password, right? So all the bulk users also we can do it in the SU10 is the transaction code. Bulk users we can do it in the SU10 transaction code here. SU53 we can find out the missing authorizations and etc here. SU01 we can find out the user creations and reset the password, all those things here. Roles and all PFCG we can create it here. In the role also we have the concept is called the single role and mass composite role here. Single role means here the normal role which we are creating as a single role here. Single role here. So composite role means collection of roles. Collection of roles are called the so composite role here. A single role that contains the data, the group of transaction codes. In one role, we are assigning the group of transaction codes, are right? SAP users are assigned to the single role. They can able to execute the transaction codes here. That is the single role here. So what about the composite role? Composite role in SAP here. Composite role is collection of all the single roles here. If you go to the PFCG here, so PFCG, so composite role means collection of all the single roles here. Collection of all the single role here. So so all the single roles we can assign. If a collection of all the single roles, we can assign to the all the single roles, collection of all the single roles, we can assign to the one composite role here. So all the roles, right? Composite roles are in SAP collection of single roles so that can be grouped together for the user administration perspective. We can assign to the here. That is called the single role here. Right? Collection role, single role here. There is a concept as a derived role. The derived role means single roles can be derived from the respective organization values into derived roles here. Derived roles here. Right? So there are the more values are there here. So derived role means here that derived from the single role means one single role that we can derive it from the single role also here. It is also known as the parent or leading role that we normally we will call it as the parent or leading role like that here. Right? So normally most of the thing like single roles only we will create the single role group of transaction codes we will assign to the single role. This role we will assign to the respective users, then respective group of users, they can perform the respective authorizations in the systems here. That's called the roles. That called the roles here. Okay. So here there is a one more transaction code is called the EWZ5. EWZ5 here. So using this transaction code EWZ5 here, so what we can do here, so if we see here, if we go to ECC systems here, mass users locking and mass users unlocking transaction code here. Lock and unlocking transaction codes here that we can use it. So EWZ5 transaction code here. System is up and running. Why it is not accessible? System is accessible. You see here, system is up and running. Why it is not accessible? Okay. IP got changed here. Internal IP. Windows System 32 drivers etc host. So here you see 121 KP online one, that is fine. It's not connecting somewhat. Okay, that's fine. So this is the way we can create the users, bulk users, the mass users creation. All those things we can perform it in the systems here. Right? So this is the user creations. User creations. Normal. Suppose someone, if you want to log into the system, you can go to the SE01 transaction code. SE01 transaction code. You can create the users. So from now onwards, what you can do, instead of login to the, now all users are logged into the base user, common user. So here you can create your own user, then you can log in with your own user and password. So in this way, you will come to know, in this way you will come to know the system load and how many users are logging and what they are doing. And if someone something did something wrong, then here we will come to know what are the users are logging and all the users information will be displayed here. Right? So this information we can find out in the SC. So we can find out. So that is the reason if you log into the individually, so that is fine. If everybody using the basis user, we are not sure what they are logging and what they are using here. So that's the reason. So please use the singly. So please create your own user in the SU01 by copy of the basis user. You can also copy it here. Go to the here. So you can also do the copy means whatever the basis, if you maintain the from user is the super user, basis user, whatever the basis user having the roles and responsibilities, all those things you will get here. All those things you will get to the here, right? All those things you will come to here. That is the reason you can use that. So copy option, or you can also use the create option. This any options you can use it to get the these things here. Okay. This is the normal user creation process here. User creation process. Okay, so you can log into the systems. You can use the user creations, lock, unlock. So reset the password. Any things that things you can perform it in the systems. Okay, those things you can use and perform it in the system. Okay, so with this, so we have small portion of the security also we completed.